Well, good afternoon, or I guess good morning. It is great to see this conference room packed with this many folks, and that is our goal one day, to have this many Republicans in this conference room, so, or maybe in the other conference room. So, but I want to thank everyone for being here today. I certainly want to thank all of my colleagues in the Senate Republican Conference and in the Assembly Republican Conference. I want to thank my partner here in the state legislature, Assembly Republican Leader Will Barkley, who you're going to hear from very shortly. And of course, I want to welcome, it is a distinct honor for me to welcome a New Yorker, our director and border czar, Tom Homan, who is here today at the New York State Capitol to talk about two pieces of legislation, specifically Laken's Law, named for Laken Riley, and the Green Light Law. And you're going to hear from him, no doubt, on all the efforts that are happening under his leadership, under President Trump's leadership, to secure our border, both south and our northern border. Very important to a lot of New Yorkers here. Should be important to all New Yorkers. You're going to hear on his efforts to end sanctuary cities, or to certainly work to combat sanctuary cities, which are sanctuaries for criminals instead of being sanctuaries for people like Laken Riley, which we're going to hear about. But it's, again, a distinct privilege to have Director Homan here. He's a New Yorker from Carthage, or I guess West Carthage. Technically, I don't want to get in trouble there. I know there's a difference. So one time I said Carthage, and somebody said West Carthage, and I said, okay, well, okay. But he's a New Yorker, just as President Trump is a New Yorker, and I think it's a reminder. When you see the work that Director Homan is doing, it is a reminder of the important role that New Yorkers are playing in this administration. And I just think that is tremendous for the state, and I think it shows you. And who knows better sometimes the crazy policies of the far left than New Yorkers, right? Because we have to live them every day sometimes here. So. Again, I'll let my colleagues talk about Laken's Law, the details, Laken's Law, Green Light Law. But the real takeaway, and I know Director Homan, we had a talk beforehand, both of these laws work and they aim to restrict our law enforcement, our local law enforcement, from working with federal law enforcement, federal immigration officials who are tasked with enforcing existing immigration law. It puts our law enforcement, it puts them at greater risk. It actually, the Green Light Law makes it a felony for them to cooperate with ICE and our immigration officials, which is really just unconscionable and disgusting. To actually tell a law enforcement officer who takes an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of New York that they will be the felon, they will be the bad guy if they cooperate or work with Director Homan. He's going to, I think about Mayor Adams, who no one wanted him removed until he started working to try to end some of the sanctuary madness in the city of New York. And Director Homan, again, might be able to speak to that as well. But Laken's Law, Laken Riley would be alive today if it were not for Jose Ibarra and sanctuary policies here in New York that released him. He should have been on a plane somewhere, and instead he went to Georgia and murdered Laken Riley. And the Green Light Law, I've talked to Border Patrol agents, I've talked to immigration agents. This law is making their jobs more dangerous. It's making it more impossible to do what they have to do to protect the people of New York State. It's not about driver's licenses. If that's what it was about, that's all it would be in the law. But it's all about handicapping our efforts to police and secure our border and to deport people who are here illegally. And we're talking about the most violent and worst people who are here illegally. Criminals, gang members, people that you wouldn't want in your community if they were legal, let alone being illegal. And so, again, these are two laws that our conference and the Assembly Republican Conference and the Senate Republican Conference have worked to get repealed and worked to get enacted. And obviously we haven't had a whole lot of success with this governor and with the Democratic majorities. But you know what? The cavalry is coming, whether it's Director Homan, whether it's AG Pam Bondi, or President Donald Trump. There's people at the federal level now, New Yorkers in some cases, who absolutely understand what needs to be done, and they're doing it, and this conference stands ready to work with them any way we can. And so, at this time, I'm going to call up my partner in government, my partner in the legislative side of things, and someone who I know has been a stalwart on these two issues, as well as a host of others, and that is my good friend, Assembly Republican Leader Will Barkley.
Thank you very much, Leader Ort. I appreciate the partnership that our conference have together, and I think it makes public policy, makes us move and be able to push public policy when we work together. It's a great honor for me to be here with Director Homan. As Leader Ort mentioned, I like to take pride in this because I'm in Oswego County, which I think is kind of on the border of the North Country, but I consider myself North Country, and he's a fellow North Country person, so we're very proud of what he's doing for our country, and he's very happy to have him here today. You know, I look at this migrant issue sort of on two sides of the ledger. I look at one side, insanity, and one side, sane. And the fact that Biden administration opened the border, and I was writing this today, I was thinking, how many illegals came in during the Biden administration? I said first thousands. I'm wrong. It was millions. Millions of migrants flooded our country. So I'm so happy that we have President Trump and Director Homan now trying to bring sanity back to that policy. Here in New York, we have over 200,000 illegal migrants. It's cost all in about $12 billion. That's insanity. It's costing us to house and feed 220 approximately illegal aliens. The sanity is starting to recognize now that it can't continue to do that. Now, Leader Ort talked about the two bills, and I know we're going to have some of our members speak about it. The Green Light Bill gave undocumented immigrants the ability to obtain a driver's license, but doesn't allow national law enforcement to access DMV records. That's insanity. That's insanity. And certainly the sanctuary policies that we've instituted on the state and in New York City that ultimately led to the tragic death of Laken Riley, that's insanity. So we're going to bring some sanity back to this by introducing bills, and hopefully with all of us here and with the media giving us this coverage, we can get these bills moved. So thank you again. I thank my conference. I thank all of you for being here, but mostly very pleased to have the Director Homan here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Lanza. And if everybody could please join me in wishing Senator Lanza a happy birthday, too.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Leader Ort, Leader Barkley. My name is Andrew Lanza, and it is my birthday. It's great to see you all, but it's even better to see Director Homan. Leader Ort said it's cliche, but the cavalry has arrived. Laken Riley, a beautiful 22-year-old nursing student, someone at such a young age who had already dedicated her life to helping her neighbors, to making the world better. Savagely murdered in the prime of her life on a college campus in America. When I saw that as a father, I was horrified, saddened, and disgusted. How did it happen? Her murderer came into this country illegally through President Biden's open border. He was caught. The Democrats released him. Got away with crime one. Made his way to New York. Why New York? Because radical Democrats in New York, like Governor Hochul and others, Bill de Blasio in New York City, before this present mayor, said, New York's a sanctuary. You're welcome. Make your way to New York. We're going to give you a free home, free clothes, free food, flat screen TV, cell phone, whatever you want. And don't worry, your neighbors, the people who are citizens here in New York, who are barely making ends meet, they'll pay for it all. So that's what he did. And then he was arrested for committing a crime in New York City. An unwelcome guest, but a guest here in our country commits another crime. He's arrested. ICE, federal agents, coming to get him. Sick, depraved leftist politicians in the state of New York said, hey, come with me, and opened the back door and secreted him out of New York. Made his way down to Georgia, and the rest you know. I think the people who did that have blood on their hands. Laken's Law. Here's what it says. And think about it when I talk to you about what it says. And ask yourself if you thought this was already the law. Laken's Law says that if someone is here illegally in our country and is arrested in New York, law enforcement has to notify ICE. Makes sense. But they don't, and they won't without this law. If you're convicted in a court of law in New York, the court has to notify ICE. Makes sense, but they won't and they don't without this law. If you're released from prison in New York after being convicted, the court system needs to notify ICE. They should, but they don't and they won't without this law. Could you imagine that this is not what's happening already in the state of New York? That there are people that are more inclined to help people committing crimes who are here illegally than protecting their own citizens. Director Homan, on Staten Island, there's a beautiful building on Father Capodanno Boulevard. This government, together with some Bolshevik non-for-profit home for the homeless, kicked seniors and veterans out of their homes so that they could put people who are here illegally in that building. And again, everything paid by the taxpayers. Private security, room service. People across the street, citizens, working 2 jobs. They call it compassion, the leftist Democrats. It's not compassion, it's disgusting. It's insane. So what has their policy done? They call it sanctuary city. I call it a criminal hideout. Except you don't have to hide, because they'll protect you. 4 years, President Obama. I know we get numb to these numbers, but these are sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. 400,000 Americans lost their lives because of the fentanyl that came across that open border. 30,000 New Yorkers in those 4 years lost their lives. 30,000 of your neighbors died because of these compassionate, sanctuary city, open border policies of the left. 30,000 of your neighbors are not with us anymore. Who else has come across that open border in the name of compassion? Terrorists, cartels, God knows who. God knows who. We know one of them took the life of a beautiful 22-year-old girl, a little more than a year ago. We need a change. This law will make sure that my daughters, your daughters, are safe from the animals like those who took her life. We need this law. Governor Hochul put her hand on a Bible when she took the oath. She swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of New York. Honor the oath. Put Laken's Law in the budget. Make this the law of New York City. We live in a state where radical left Democrats in office have told the police department to stand down. When I was a prosecutor in Manhattan, you know what we called that? Obstruction of justice. No one could be this incompetent, so we know it's part of their plan, but if we keep the pressure on them, maybe they'll see the light. I think there's a certain poetry in the fact that while New York radical left elected officials were a big part of the problem in this country, two native New Yorkers, President Donald Trump and Director Tom Homan, are going and are fixing it and are going to be the solution. Director Homan, God bless you. On behalf of my children and all of us here who love this country, who love this state, thank you. Thank you for doing this for us. It is my honor. This bill is carried by my partner in the Assembly, by Assemblyman Gandolfo. And you know, the funny thing is, we put this law in place on paper before she lost her life. And then after that tragic event, we decided to rename it. And so, Assemblyman Gandolfo.
First, it's an honor to stand here with all my colleagues in both the Assembly and the Senate, those of us here who are fighting for sanity in this state. But it's even more of an honor to be joined by Director Homan, who at President Trump's direction is leading that fight for sanity at the federal level. We are so fortunate to have him here and to have an administration that takes border security seriously and has done a phenomenal job so far. To date, the Trump administration has made great progress on border security, and Congress has passed and President Trump has signed the Laken-Riley Act at the federal level. And what that does is prioritizes criminal illegal immigrants for removal from this country. Now it's time for New York to follow suit and to do its part and assist in the apprehension of these individuals. And what that means is putting an end to the sanctuary state policies that have funneled illegal immigrants to our state and have fueled the migrant crisis we are dealing with that has eroded public safety and has cost our state billions of dollars over the last couple of years. That's billions of dollars that could have been spent on programs for legal, law-abiding New Yorkers. Instead, it went to New York City to pay for the migrant crisis that was caused by the Democrat policies. It can't go on any longer. Now, Governor Hochul, she's had some tough rhetoric where she said, I think she would be the first one to call the federal government to remove criminal illegal immigrants. But Director Homan, I can't imagine your phone has been ringing off the hook from Kathy Hochul. So it is up to us here to do something, because as it stands now, all those sanctuary policies are still on the books. Executive Order 170 of 2017 established New York as a sanctuary state. This was put in place by our former governor, who's running for mayor now, but Kathy Hochul has had the authority to repeal that from day one. She didn't need the legislature, all she needs is her pen. And that's an issue. She can do that today, she can do it tomorrow, but she hasn't and she won't. Now, what Laken's law does, as Senator Lanza mentioned, it aims to address some of these sanctuary policies, most importantly, reporting arrests of illegal immigrants to ICE, notifying ICE when they are released from incarceration. It does a couple other things. Number two, it would repeal the Protect Our Courts Act that was passed a few years ago, which prohibits ICE agents from being able to make arrests at courthouses, to and from courthouses. Again, that is a policy specifically put in place to shield criminal illegal immigrants. It's nonsense. The other point of it is it would restore a maximum penalty of 365 days for Class A and unclassified misdemeanors, which a couple of years ago, Assembly Democrats and Senate Democrats, signed by Governor Cuomo, reduced the penalty by 1 day to make it 364 days to prevent illegal immigrants who are committing these crimes from being flagged for deportation by the federal government. And now some of these are pretty serious crimes. A Class A misdemeanor in New York is sexual misconduct, resisting arrest, assault in the third degree. Why on earth are we protecting those kinds of people from the federal government? Those people should be the first on the list to be sent back home and be no longer enabled to endanger New Yorkers. And again, I am so happy we have Director Homan here, who's going to talk about this a little more, and the importance of some cooperation between our state and ICE. We have to put an end to these sanctuary policies. It can't go on any longer. It is out of step with what everyday New Yorkers want to see from their state government. We have to get rid of those sanctuary laws, including the Green Light Law, which my colleague from the Senate, Senator Dan Steck, is going to talk a little bit more about right now. So, Senator.
morning, everyone. Senator Dan Steck. I represent the North Country along the Canadian border from Lake Champlain all the way out to Ogdensburg. So that's Clinton County, Franklin County, and half of St. Lawrence County. Director Homan, welcome home, welcome back. It's great to have a fellow North Country native here in the room with us and having our backs both on the northern and southern border. Absolutely delighted to talk about the Green Light Bill. In 2019, one of the first acts after one-party rule came into effect after the 2018 elections, chomping at the bit, Albany Democrats couldn't wait to start their agenda. So in 2019, they put into place a law that they pitched as, well, this will just allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses that are indistinguishable from the rest of ours to law enforcement or anyone that's looking at them. You can't tell the difference. So that they don't feel pressure and they can go to work and they can contribute to the economy. That was their stated argument. What they didn't highlight, but which is the God's honest truth, is that that law also prohibits local and state law enforcement from coordinating with any federal agencies having to do with immigration. It prohibits them from sharing DMV data, the license plate readers that we all pay for that are all over the place. Our police can see them, but they can't share that information with the law enforcement. Now, again, I represent a border community, and I can tell you that people along the northern border are terrified. I have been on the northern border many times with all my sheriffs and with Border Patrol. Last year, more illegal crossings on the Canadian border occurred in the Swanton sector, which runs from New Hampshire to Watertown, than the rest of the Canadian border combined. People are flooding in, and they're coming predominantly, according to my briefings from Border Patrol, from Bangladesh and India. So they're not walking here, and they're not swimming here. They're flying in airplanes, they're landing in airports. So they're already in a captured environment as far as, you know, you've got to go through a border to get here. But once they get off the plane, they start making their way south. They're not flooding Seattle more than any other sector on the border. They're crossing in my district to go to New York City because Kathy Hochul and the Democrats turn on the big magnet and says, come here, we'll protect you, we'll give you free food, you can step over the homeless veterans on your way into your free housing, we'll give you the cell phones and $1,000 a month EBT cards. That is the insanity of Kathy Hochul's Albany. She's done nothing to change it. She has emergency authorities, as we all learned from COVID, to waive any law. She hasn't lifted a finger to do anything with the green light law. Last fall, first week of school in northern Clinton County, 9 immigrants stopped a school bus at a school bus stop, banging on the door because they wanted to ride into town. I'm pretty sure a yellow school bus is internationally known. But these are parents putting on elementary school kids the first week of school onto, and that's their memory. Their cherished memory of first day of school in Clinton County was being accosted by illegal immigrants at our border, at a bus stop. It's absolutely insane. So in 2021, after a conversation I had with the sheriff of Clinton County, Dave Fabro, he said, you know, why don't we at least exempt the border counties so that we can talk to our partners in green and do something about this. Great idea. Wrote a bill's in. It's carried by my friend and colleague, fellow North Country native Scott Gray, who you're going to hear from in just a second. It would simply allow, it would waive the green light law, and it would allow, again, that communication. That we are asking, the Albany Democrats are requiring by law our federal partners to operate blind. They're literally holding their hands over our law enforcement on the northern border. And again, the most heavily trafficked, illegally crossed, you're talking drug traffickers, human traffickers, you're talking fentanyl traffickers, gun runners, everything you got. They're back and forth between Montreal and New York City, my district. And Kathy Hochul's done nothing for it. So again, this bill would repeal the green light bill and restore some sanity, and again, make New York safe again. Tom Homan, thank you so much for your leadership and for being here today. It's a delight to be here. And again, I'll call up all of our friends, and your good friend, Scott Gray, to talk about his end of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. It's a pleasure to be with you today. So I'm just going to dial it back a little bit because I just want to point out, you know, some of the gifts that keep on giving in New York State. And, you know, we have one-party rule, and we have a lot of self-destructed policies with one-party rule. But they're gifted. You have to give them that much because they campaign on fixing their problems. So let me give you a couple of different examples. Affordability, you're hearing that word every other day here, probably every day here. And yet they propose over $250 billion budget, right? They have CLCPA which is probably arguably the worst policy in New York State that is driving utility bills up. We are soft on crime, but yet they tell you they're concerned about public safety. You've heard a couple of bills today that have discussed just exactly where they're soft on crime. And then, to top it off, we fire 2,000 corrections officers. At the same time, we have a website up that says New York Helps, looking for employment. And that is the hypocrisy of one-party rule in Albany. So we have resources, you've heard it. We have the cavalry is here. President Trump believes in law and order, and Director Homan, who I call Tom, is certainly dedicated to law and order, dedicated to some sanity in state policy and in federal policy, and as a partner for us. So it's a pleasure to introduce to you Tom, who I grew up with through my high school and through when we were young in West Carthage, New York. And Tom's story is one of dedication, service, and unwavering commitment to his country. He started his law enforcement career as a local police officer in West Carthage, New York. He worked up through the ranks of the Border Patrol before he was appointed acting director of ICE back in 2017 under President Trump. And then he was later just appointed as the border czar in 2025. So when Tom, prior to his appointment, he called me up. And he said, we're going to take care of a few things in New York. And he said, and one thing is the northern border. So I represent the northern border, as Senator Steck said. And if you're in the federal government, I represent part of the Buffalo sector, and I represent part of the Swanton sector. So we've had a tremendous amount of illegal crossings, dangerous illegal crossings by water and by land, including the New York Power Authority dam up in Messina. And Tom said, he said, I promise you, we will not forget the northern border. We'll take care of the southern border, and we'll secure the northern border. The southern border is just as important to us right now because the men and the women of the 10th Mountain Division that is home to our area with Assemblyman Blankenbush are deployed on the southern border to assist. So we're very much paying attention to that. So Tom rose through the ranks. He was in charge of ICE, acting director, a force of 20,000 personnel across there. And he was recognized for his service with the Distinguished Presidential Rank Award, as well as the National Security Medal, excuse me. And then again in 2025, he's been appointed the border czar. So his deep experience, his knowledge of immigration enforcement, and passion for securing our homeland and territorial integrity for the United States. And he's the right man for the job at the right time when we needed him. Tom has worked under 6 presidents. I will tell you his largest deportation effort that has been completed to date was under President Obama. So hopefully this one will top that because we have more immigrants, more migrants in here through the Biden administration than ever before. So as I like to tell everybody, from West Carthage, New York to the West Wing, my dear friend, I call him Tom, they call him a director. Tom Homan, please.
Well, before I start, to New York State Correctional Guards, I'm with you. I'm on my lane a little bit, but these men and women stand behind the wire with some of the most dangerous people in this state. And I think they should be honored and respected for the difficult job they do every day. So today's my birthday. Every day's my birthday because I work for the greatest president of my lifetime, Donald Trump. And that's just a stone cold truth. I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I worked for took steps to secure the border. Even President Clinton and Obama took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security. You can't have strong national security without border security. No one understood that better than President Trump's first term. His success on the border was unprecedented. Unprecedented. Now, he just came back in office, and I came back out of retirement for the second time to serve as president because I respect him so greatly. He did in 3 weeks what Joe Biden couldn't do in 4 years. Border numbers right now are down 96%. 96% border numbers are down. He was at over 90% in 3 weeks. 96% decrease. That means when you got 96% less people crossing that border, less women are being raped by the cartels, less children are dying making that journey, less Americans are dying from fentanyl that comes across the north border, less women and children are sex trafficked, less terrorists are getting into this country. Joe Biden had 400 people on terrorist watch lists coming across the border. In 4 years under Trump 1, we have 14. The numbers are unprecedented. And before I get to the green light law, let me set the facts straight, because I'm reading a lot of stuff in newspapers that just simply isn't true. President Trump promised the biggest deportation operation in the history of this nation. That's the right thing to do. It has to be done. Let me explain why. We had millions of people come to our border, make claims of asylum, demand the right to due process, the right to see a judge, and they were provided that. But due process doesn't mean anything if the final decision of the courts aren't carried out. So for those 90%, actually about 86.4, I think, last time I looked, 90% of those who come to our border claim asylum end up with an order removal after due process. If we don't execute those orders, then what the hell are we doing? Shut down immigration court doesn't mean anything anymore. Take the border patrol off the border, there's no consequences. No, when you have a mass migration such as this, where 9 out of 10 will get order removal, they have to be removed. Because if you don't, you send a message to the whole world, you can enter our country illegally, which is a crime, and you can ignore a federal judge's order for deport. If that's the message we want to send as a country, you're never going to solve the problem. Women will continually be raped making that journey. Children will be raped making that journey. People will die making that journey. More Americans die in fentanyl. We have to have consequences for violating laws in this country. So at the end of a historic illegal immigration, where the vast majority get ordered removed, there has to be an historic deportation operation, or the whole system is broken. So that's why it's necessary. And let's be clear, President Trump is committed, and I've committed, that we're focusing on public safety threats and national security threats. The worst first. Look at the numbers that bear it out. But I mean, media reports that you're arresting a lot of collaterals, non-criminals. Well, guess where most of them are being arrested at? Sanctuary cities, sanctuary jurisdictions. Because if you don't let ICE into jail to talk to the illegal alien that you locked in a jail cell, not us. You took an illegal alien and locked him in a jail cell. That's who we want to talk to. But instead of letting us give us access to it, honoring our detainer, what did you release them in the public? What does that mean? That means the men and women of ICE are going to have to go out in the neighborhood and find them. So sanctuary cities are going to get exactly what they don't want. More agents in the community and more collateral arrests because you have forced us in the community because you failed to let us into jail. What a shame. Why not give access? Someone in the country that committed a crime against U.S. citizens sitting in jail, why not give access ICE to that person so when you're done with them, we can have them and do our job? Because releasing a public safety threat back in the public is just stupid. Just common sense. And you see this, I always see this language, sanctuary cities, well, we're a welcoming community because we want illegal aliens to feel safe coming to law enforcement to report crimes as victims and witnesses of crime, and without the fear that we're working with ICE. That is a bunch of crap. Victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy back out there either. Yeah. When you release a public safety threat back in the public, it puts the public at greater risk because they will recidivate. It puts the public at greater risk of crime. It certainly puts the victim witness at greater risk. It puts the community at greater risk. It puts the officers at great risk. It puts the alien at great risk. Because anything can happen on street arrest. That's just stone cold fact. So let us into jails. In my day, when I was an agent, a long time ago, I never heard of sanctuary jurisdictions. Law enforcement worked with law enforcement. New York State's my home. I was born here. I was raised here. I went to college here. Great city, Utica. I have a summer home here now. My life's dream is to retire in this state. But I can tell you right now, this isn't the state I grew up in. It's sad. Law enforcement don't have the respect they should have. This is the finest 1% this country has, to include corrections officers. I'll say it again, President Trump's the greatest president of my lifetime. As the guy who fought border security my whole life, as the guy who stood in the back of a tractor trailer and 19 dead aliens who baked to death, including a 5-year-old little boy. As a guy who's talked to young ladies as young as 9, who were brutally raped numerous times by members of the cartel for simply crossing the border as part of payment. As a guy who ran Operation Ice Storm in Phoenix, Arizona, where criminal cartels were killing aliens because they couldn't afford the smuggling fee, so they called their relatives up, tell them you pay twice as much or we'll kill them, and they did. Relatives being called up, listen to their relative being tortured because they couldn't pay smuggling fees. Now we got a president who wants to secure the border and save lives. Secure borders save lives. Like I just said, when you got the numbers down 96%, how many lives are being saved? When 96% less people are coming, how many women aren't being raped? Now, under Joe Biden, they say, well, President Trump's policy is inhumane. Homan, you're a racist. Trump, you're a racist. Your policies are inhumane. Oh, really? How many lives are being saved right now today because that border is secure? Under Joe Biden, a record number of Americans dead from fentanyl coming across that border. A 600% increase in sex trafficking of young women and children. A record number of Americans dying from fentanyl coming across the open border. Don't tell me about humanity. I've seen the worst of the worst. And everybody always says, why do you get so emotional? Why do you get angry? I get pissed off that anybody wants to purposely open this border up and put lives at risk. Open borders has killed record number of Americans, killed a record number of aliens, and that's just a stone cold fact. Look at the data, it's there for you to see. President Trump's saving lives every day. President Trump committed to concentrate on the worst of the worst and driving down illegal alien crime. That's exactly what we're doing. I looked at the numbers this morning. We're about 35,000 interior arrests, somewhere in that neighborhood. Vast majority being criminals. There are non-criminals, but again, sanctuary cities is to blame for most of that stuff. So we're keeping our promise. I want to be clear. If you're in the country legally, you're not off the table. I made that clear from day one. It's not okay to be in this country legally. It's a violation of the law. And for members of Congress saying it's not it's not a crime to enter the country, wrong. As a member of Congress, you should know what the law says. It's ridiculous. Now we got Congress people out there saying they're educating illegal aliens to their constitutional rights. Okay, you can claim that. We all know what's going on. You're teaching people how to evade law enforcement, which means we're arresting less child predators. We're arresting less people convicted of sex crimes and serious assault crimes because they're educated. Fine. You're not going to stop us. New York State, you got to change the sanctuary status. If you don't, get out of the way because we're going to do our job. I like to work with law enforcement. I think cops should work with cops. I thought we learned after 9/11, there should be no stovefights, should be working cops with cops. Now let's talk about the green light law. Let's talk about your governor. Your governor who's staying on national TV after NYPD were assaulted by illegal alien gang members. You had a woman burned alive by illegal alien subway. Your governor stands on national TV. I think criminal aliens should be deported. What's one of the first things she do? She goes down to New York City and tries to fire the mayor who wants to help me find public safety threats. Let me give a shout at Mayor Adams. Like him or love him, I called him up for 2 years by not doing enough. As a career cop, he wasn't doing enough. But when I sat down with him back in November, he came to the table. He wanted to help on significant public safety threats. He don't want to be an immigration officer. I don't want to be an immigration officer. But the mere fact he wants to get us into Rikers Island, where people are locked up because they committed a crime. He wanted to get federal immigration authorities back into Rikers Island to talk to illegal aliens who committed a crime against a citizen. And the governor runs down there and wants to fire him because he's working with Tom Homan? And as far as all this, well, he's making a deal because of his criminal issues, I've been talking to him since November, had nothing to do with that, as far as I'm concerned. I'm happy that the mayor of New York City, the largest city in the world, is actually sitting down with law enforcement and make that city safer. He wants to be a law and order mayor. Then your mayor, who says criminal aliens should be deported, goes down there and wants them out of office. Then and at the same time she says it, she got a green light law, which prevents ICE and CBP, who again are focusing on national security threats and public safety threats. You can't have access to DMV data? Then I see the chief of staff say the other day, the border czar should know they can get that with a warrant. Really? The ATF need a warrant? FBI need a warrant? DA need a warrant? U.S. Marshals need a warrant? This is an attack on immigration enforcement that's plain what it is. And let me tell you something. In my 40 years doing this job, I've buried enough Border Patrol agents, I've buried enough ICE agents. When you don't give access to important data that helps drive a criminal investigation, to help them to identify exactly who this person is, you're putting their life at risk. The men and women of the Border Patrol, men and women at ICE, they strap a gun to their hip every day, they put a Kevlar vest on, they put their lives on the line. We just lost one in Vermont a few weeks ago. And you can prevent these officers from having from DMV information that's going to help drive a criminal investigation on a national security threat, public safety threat. You're going to deny them information to know how bad this person is, because any cop in this room, and I was one, and one of the first things you do is run DMV data to get more information on who this person is. And considering they're working on national security threats and public safety threats, you're going to lock them out of that data? You're going to require a warrant for them but no other federal law enforcement agency? Ridiculous. So she's talking about both sides of her mouth. Oh, I want criminal aliens deported, but she puts all the roadblocks where it's not happening. You have illegal alien crime murders happen in this state. I think you had some in Buffalo, you had some in Syracuse. Never heard of that in my day when I grew up here. We're a nation of laws. No one should be pushing back on removing public safety threats from their communities. And get this. Let's say we went through the problem of getting a warrant, which is ridiculous on its face. The law says, then the bad guy gets notified, we're looking into him. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Utterly ridiculous. You're going to notify the bad guy that he's being investigated. Every elected, I don't care if you're Republican, a Democrat, or independent, every elected official's number one responsibility is this: protection of their community. And what this green light law does is put your community at risk. Because if we can't arrest the bad guy, we don't have information on the bad guy, if we can't have data to help us support a criminal investigation, then the community's at risk. You're not just putting the officers at risk, you're putting your community at risk. And I'm done with it. I'm sick of it. This is my home. And always will be. And I'll do everything I can to protect it. And as Scott says, you got to tell people like I grew up on the northern border. I have a home on the northern border now. I care what happens to the northern border because I grew up here. So Scott was right. Northern border is not being ignored. President Trump's committed to securing the southern border. We got record security now. I'm focused on the northern border now because President Trump made a promise to the American people. His mandate was to enforce immigration laws, secure our border. Securing our border save lives. And for those that don't know, a lot of special interest aliens enter through Canada. The likelihood of a terrorist coming across the northern border is very likely. We're going to pay strict attention to the northern border, just not New York, the entire northern border. But under Joe Biden, let me tell you what he did to your northern border. Under Joe Biden, millions of people coming across the border, about half of the northern border agents were assigned on the southern border. And the half that stayed here, many of them were processing illegal aliens virtually from the southern border, which means the northern border was lawless. Clinton County got killed with numbers. We're going to fix that. We're fixing it now, and I won't stop until the northern border is as tight and secure as the southern border. So I'll end with this. I love my job because we're saving lives. And I work for a president who wants to save lives. I work for a president committed to make this country safe again. And that's exactly what we're doing. You want to hate on me? Hate on me. I eat it up. Because I know what I'm doing. And if anybody in the media or anybody that doesn't support this president and his mission, wear my shoes for 35 years and see the tragedies I've seen. I'm sick of it. Laken Riley, God bless her. Listen to 17 minutes of that young lady. 17 minutes fighting for her life. She didn't want to die. That young girl fought for her life. Can you imagine? And why don't you put she just didn't die. I want you to think about something. Put your daughter in her shoes, or your sister, or your mother. Think how terrified her last minutes of life were like while she's suffering, fighting just to survive. Laken Riley's one out of many. I've met hundreds of angels and moms and dads who buried their children. You know, I always hear all the time, family separation, Homan's the godfather saying family separation. Let me be clear. Zero tolerance is about saving lives. Because we figure we start prosecuting people who violate the law and put the children in harm's way, maybe they stop coming. And they did. The numbers went down. It's unfortunate families got separated. But it happens to American families every day. It's going to happen in Albany today that an American family will be separated by law enforcement because the child can't go to jail with the parent. But we want to talk about family separation? 500,000 children on Joe Biden were trafficked into this country. They can't find 300,000 of them. That's a separation. But you know what President Trump's committed? We're going to find them, and we're going to save them, because many of these children are in forced labor, many of these children are in forced sex slavery. We're going to save them. This administration. What is... You want to talk about family separation, talk to the angel moms and dad who buried their child. My worst nightmare, everybody in this room, your worst nightmare is bury your child. And I've talked to hundreds of angel moms who did that. And finally, I'll say this. I read it this morning. It irritates me every time I read it. Illegal aliens commit less crimes than Americans. Really? Show me the data. Because I've seen just as many studies push back against that. But let's say that's true. Doesn't matter. Every crime committed by illegal aliens is a preventable crime. None of them are acceptable. One's too many. So I don't want to hear that garbage. Secure border saves lives. President Trump, he's a great president. He's saving lives every day by locking down this border, by removing public safety threats. He's doing the job he promised Americans. I couldn't be more proud to work for a man that's dedicated to the service of this nation and makes this country safe again. So God bless President Trump. And I want to say one more thing. What a cabinet he put together. Kristi Noem, DHS Secretary. She has done more enforcement actions in her first week as Secretary than Alejandro Mayorkas did in 4 years. She's been out with ICE, she's been out with CBP, she's been out with the Coast Guard. God bless Kristi Noem. She's going to do a great job. Kash Patel, great pick for FBI. Pam Bondi, New York State, watch out for Pam Bondi. Because she's going to take on Sanctuary City. So I'm proud to be a part of this group. Every day I walk in the White House, my head's held high, because I know we're doing the right thing, not just for the United States. We're saving migrant lives, we're saving American lives, and we're making this country safe again. So I couldn't be more proud to work for this administration than the proudest moments of my life. I love my job, and I love New York, and I'll never forget about New York. So, good?
All right, questions? New York 1, Bernadette. Hi, Mr. Homan, Bernadette from New York 1. Question about the pro-Palestinian protester who was arrested. President Trump said that he was distributing pro-Hamas flyers and that he wanted him out of the country. What more can you tell us about any violation of his visa? What crime did he commit? And another follow-up with Mayor Adams, you said that you were going to be...
His actions are directly contradictory to the United States foreign policy. That's a Secretary of State. That's a charge on the Secretary of State. We consider him a national security threat. when you're on campus and they say, and I hear freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Can you stand in a movie theater and yell fire? Can you slander somebody verbally? Free speech has limitations, but when you go to a college campus, you incite protesting and locking down and taking over buildings and damaging property and handing out leaflets for Hamas, who is a terrorist organization. Coming to this country either on a visa or becoming a resident alien is a great privilege, but there are rules associated with that. You might be able to get away with that stuff on the last administration, but you won't under this administration.
Mayor Post Vaughn, just,
Go ahead.
can I just do a follow-up quickly? With Mayor Adams, you said that you'd be watching him and making sure that he would comply with whatever it is that you discussed. Are you getting a progress report from City Hall? Do you think he's doing a good job in following up with you?
We're in discussions right now.
How do you like what he's been doing since you met? What have you
He's
seen?
made
What
great
tangible?
commitments. We're already working on some things. I can't share it all with you right now because until we get a signed agreement, I don't want to comment on it. I'm not going to give anybody credit until I get something on paper, but we're meeting again this week.
New York Post, Vaughn.
Sir, you mentioned the green light law, the executive order in place that governs a lot of the state's sanctuary policies. Both of those things were put into place by former Governor Cuomo, of course, running for New York City mayor. Does the former governor have any place in New York politics, in your opinion, given these things?
If he supports sanctuary laws, no. I don't think so. Every elected, it made me clear, every elected official should want to do everything they can legally to make sure public safety threats are removed from the community. If he doesn't support that, I don't support him. I mean, it's just, there's no excuse for someone being in the country illegally to commit a crime and not being handed over to ICE. I don't understand it. It's just, you know, they're here in violation of law. That's not okay, first of all. And a lot of the people who are looking at it, they're just not criminals. Like, let's get back to members of Congress educating people. They're educating people who enter country illegally, which is a crime, got convicted of a serious offense, and were ordered removed by a federal judge after due process. Who doesn't think they should be removed, for God's sakes? We're a system of laws. We need to follow the law.
Buffalo News, Rob Gavin.
Hi, I just want to ask, a few months ago, there was some talk that there could be a situation where your department would be looking to keep cars with New York license plates from re-entering the country, you know, at the border, you know, if there was not compliance with sharing information. Is that something that's under consideration
No,
still?
I made that comment comparing what I just said. How would she feel if we did that? Just made a decision that hurt New Yorkers. How would she feel? It's just, you know, so that was what I brought up. She can do this hurt law enforcement, which I think hurts New Yorkers and makes this state less safe. How would she feel if we just locked out NCIC from all the New York State law enforcement? The feds own the NCIC. Why would we lock that out? While I was making this comparison, she makes the decision and puts the state at great public safety risk and puts her officer at great risk. What if I did the same thing, or this administration did the same thing? You know what? We won't, because we want to protect New Yorkers.
Follow up, what is the border situation now at Buffalo as compared to the Swan sector?
The numbers are down about 68%.
Jason.
Not 96%. We still got to get there, but like I said, we had to put the resources where the fires were. The biggest fires were down south. We're 96% down. Northern border is about 68%, depending on what sector you looked at. We got more work to do. We're a hell of a lot lower than we were in the last administration.
Jason Politico, New York.
Mr. Homan, since you're not going to, consider barring these New York drivers from re-entering the U.S., I know there's a lawsuit against Opal and the state, but what else?
First of all, I didn't say we're not going to bar them. It says it's not under consideration this time, as far as I know.
And what other measures are you planning to implement to get Opal to follow federal immigration policy? Are there other things you might be expecting?
We're going to do our job despite this administration. We're going to go arrest public safety threats. We're going to go arrest national security threats. We'll double the man force here if we have to. Because rather than one officer arresting a bad guy in the jail, one officer arresting one bad guy, now I got to send the whole team because of officer safety concerns, community safety concerns to go look for this guy. Very inefficient, especially looking for people that want to be found. Which means what? It means we send more officers to New York to get the job done.
Alex Galt, Watertown Times.
Hi, Mr. Homan. Thanks for doing this. I wanted to ask, when it comes to fentanyl crossing the border, we've seen a relatively small amount coming in from Canada. At the same time, the president is talking about using tariffs against the Canadians to get concessions from them on border security and on reducing fentanyl coming into the country. What are you doing specific to drug enforcement along the border, and what would you like to see considering how low the numbers are already?
Well, it's just not about fentanyl, too. It's about immigration. There's other things to consider. I'm working with members of Canada. I've met with them twice. I'm meeting with them again next week. We're working on it. Mexico, Canada's willing to come to the table and do some things. The president doesn't think they're doing enough. And I think the president has proven over and over again his negotiation skills are unmatched. I think he's going to get exactly what he wants. We'll have the most secure northern border in the history of this nation because of President Trump's negotiation with the country of Mexico.
Mark Ronich.
Mr. Homan, thanks for coming to Albany. I wanted to ask you about since you're from West Hartford, you know about the Aquasasne Indian Reservation. That seems to be a hole because they're a sovereign nation where the illegal immigrants are coming through the Aquasasne Reservation. What can you do to plug that hole?
That's one of the subjects we talked about Canada. That's one of the subjects I mentioned and talked to Canada about. We're putting together a plan to deal with that. I don't want to give, it's law enforcement sensitive. I don't want to tell you exactly what we're talking about. Canada, we specifically talked about the reservation and the danger it imposes. So we're working on a plan for that now. I can't share a lot with your kids. I don't want to show our hand, but it's got my attention. Again, I grew up here. I know what happens there. And Canada also realizes it's an issue. So we're working on a plan to deal with it.
Kate Lisa, Spectrum.
Doctor, just curious if you contacted Governor Hochul's office and tried to get a meeting with her and if there was a response.
No, she's got my phone number. She can call me.
New York Times.
Mr. Homan, do you expect, or are ICE removal operations right now off limits in shelters across the state, or do you expect that to change over time? And also, you've sort of spoken to this a little bit, but what do you make of, the city's policy of requiring a judicial warrant for ICE to go into certain locations? Is that obstructive?
No, it isn't. It's terrible policy. And as far as the sense of location policy, we had our own sense of location policy, and we did away with it. I'm glad you brought that up because, people are saying, "Oh, ICE is going to raid schools. ICE is going to raid churches." It's just such crap. We're not going to raid churches. We're not going to raid schools. But however, we're going to be like every other state and local and federal law enforcement agencies. If there's an MS-13 gang member who's going to high school, and he's wanted for serious public safety violations, we're going to go in that school and arrest that MS-13 member. If we know he's there right now, he's a public safety threat, we have a warrant, let's go get him. We know where he's at so he doesn't get away. So it's not about raiding schools, it's not about raiding churches, but the left's pushing it, we want to, no one instills fear in the immigrant community, is the left, the Democrats, they instill fear. ICE is going to raid schools. And we got kids not going to school because they think their school's going to be raided. It's ridiculous.
What about the shelters in the city? Is that an area you guys are staying away from right now, or do you expect to go into those at some point?
We're going to enforce the law no matter where it is.
Gotham. Next question.
Mr. Homan, thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Specifically, if Laken's law doesn't pass, if this lawsuit against the green light law goes nowhere, what are the different kinds of things you would consider doing? What are the other steps of courses of action you can do? And specifically with that pro-Palestinian student from Columbia, on his arrest papers, what exactly does it say in terms of the charge?
I'm familiar with the exact charge. I can just tell you what my discussions have been with it, is that it's a direct violation of our foreign policy objectives. When you hand out leaflets, incite violence on the college campus, that's illegal. Being in this country with a visa or a resident alien card is a privilege, and you got to follow certain rules. Resident aliens get removed all the time when they commit certain crimes. So he's no different. And he's not going to be the only one. Your first question is, look, Pam Bonnie's already filed a lawsuit. And if she has to keep filing lawsuits, that's what we're going to do. I'm hoping the voters of New York State see what we're doing. And I'm not asking somebody to vote either way. I can't do that. But I'm saying that I think the voters look at exactly what ICE is doing, who we're arresting. I think President Trump has a lot of support for what he's doing. The majority of Americans believe in removing criminal threats. And I think New York feels the same way. I don't know if your elected politicians do. I know the ones behind me do. But I'm hoping more and more we educate the American people exactly what we're doing, exactly who we're arresting. I think there's going to be pressure put on New York to do their common sense thing to protect the communities of the state.
So I just want to make sure, you're not familiar with what the arrest charges are.
I have not read the arrest report. I've been traveling, but I'm aware of the arrest. I'm aware of why he was arrested, and it's justified what happened to him.
CBS, Tom Eshwin.
Mr. Homan, you go down the street here in Albany, they're down dozens of police officers. Do you think local law enforcement has the resources to both cooperate with ICE and also conduct public safety for Americans that are committing crimes?
Yes.
Why?
Because they want public safety threats out of their community too, and they're willing to work with feds to make that happen. Every time I go in New York City, I don't think I've ever seen an NYPD officer that didn't come shake my hand and thank me for what we're doing. They want to help. These officers, they don't get paid a lot of money, but they want to protect their community, and they know someone's here illegally, and they can help not only remove them from the community, remove them from the country, make the community safer. They're all in. And I don't think it takes a lot of, rather than arresting the same guy 5 times, arrest him once, give him an ounce, you don't arrest him anymore. I think it's going to relieve a lot of officers' time on the streets. And plus, we're talking about, again, I'm not asking the immigration officers, I'm talking about let us in your jail to arrest a bad guy in the jail. That way the PD's not dealing with him anymore when he goes out and recommits. So I think let's put it this way, I've never met a law enforcement officer that came to me and says he does not support the removal of criminal aliens. It makes our community safer, and that's what they're all about. That's why they wear that badge, that's why they took that oath.
Do you think the dismissal of the charges against Adams will make immigration enforcement easier in the city?
It has nothing to do with anything about I don't know anything about his criminal investigations. I'm on my lane. I truly believe, I sat down with the guy. I saw a career cop in him really concerned about making New York City safer. And I'm going to be clear on this. Not every criminal in New York is an alien. Not every alien's a criminal. Public safety threat, but there's some that are. So I think he shares a feeling with me. If we meet New York safer by removing public safety threats that are in the country illegally, that's less he has to deal with that makes the community safer. Every public safety threat, illegal alien we take out of New York City makes that city more safe.
Last question, Times Union, Dan Clark.
Over here. Hey, Mr. Homan.
Hi.
Thanks for coming here. Just to clarify with the governor, so has there been any communication between you and anybody in her administration? And second,
She hasn't communicated with me.
she hasn't communicated with you, and has your office reached out at all?
No.
And in the mayor, you said that you're waiting, you're
Let's
negotiating.
be
with
clear,
some-
I'm doing nothing wrong. She is.
Sure. On the signed agreement with the mayor, can you just kind of clarify what you're seeking there? Like what it would take to get an agreement, I guess? Are you just seeking like a signed agreement on the Rikers?
No, I want to get, look, the mayor's committed several things, getting us in Rikers Island and help me find 300,000 children where many are going to be in New York City. Children that are in forced labor. Not all of them. Some of these children are going to be with families, which is perfectly fine. But look, I've done this for 40 years. I can guarantee you some of these are in forced labor. We've already found some in forced labor. ICE has already had investigation in meat packing plants and other things. They found these children. We want to save the children. He equally is committed to finding children, and the immigration consequences will come later. But right now, many of these children are waking up, living a nightmare every day, and he's equally concerned that we save these children. So he's trying to do the right thing. I really truly believe he wants to make New York City safer, and you make New York City safer when you work with federal law enforcement partners, not lock them out like New York State's done.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.